Hello, good afternoon to everyone. Bonsoir, bonsoir. Thank you very much for being here. My name is Josep Canals, Secretary General of MedCities, and I'm very glad and thankful for being invited by the Euro-Mediterranean Institute, the EMET, the European Institute of the Euro-Mediterranean. Thank you very much for having us. Let me tell some words in my mother tongue, Catalan. Bon dia, moltes gràcies a tothom per ser aquí. Thank you very much. This is the fifth dialogue out of 6 of a conference cycle called The Road to a More Sustainable and Climate Resilient Mediterranean. This is the dialogue number 5, Cities and Climate Change, Mitigation and Adaptation Strategies in the Mediterranean. Is here with me Hana Alamuddin, Mrs. Hana Alamuddin, which I will introduce later more properly. Thank you very much for being here too. And let me first do some reflections that why we're doing here. I would say that maybe this is the core of the climate change, in my opinion, because in cities are happening things very fast. The increasing urbanization, the type of land use, how the cities are using the land use. Many cities are increasing their urbanizations without a proper urban planning in our region. So the impacts are several. Many people have been attracted by cities because in countryside it's a difficult way of living. So they are seeking for better lives in the Mediterranean region, in cities. So cities are increasing too fast, I would say. So the impact of this increasing and the already existing cities are several. You know, for sure is the mobility, the air pollution, the noise pollution. As I said, the use of land without planning many times. There is the fragmentation of biodiversity many times. And many cities with great values in biodiversity then have been losing this great heritage. That is biodiversity. All of these challenges are faced by cities, and cities suffer, on the other hand, the lack, many of you, the lack of competencies. I've been a mayor myself, and I know how mayors suffer because they have the problems there. They have the people to attend, the people to give them services, but the lack of competencies, the lack of resources, the lack of all the needs, the human resources, the financial resources, and the power, the competences, which in many ways, in many cases, are held by states, or in some cases by regions. So this is an added difficulty for these cities. Let me introduce briefly why we are here on behalf of MedCities. What is MedCities? I will share with you. Hopefully this is going properly. So MedCities, we like to say, maybe not so humbly, but we like to say that we are the Mediterranean local voice to the world. We are a network of 63 municipalities and union of municipalities from all shores of the Mediterranean Basin. All of them from states that has a coastal side with the Mediterranean Sea, plus Portugal and Jordan. So what do? We work together, we share experiences, we as association give services to our member cities, to our local authorities. We are a platform of innovative projects that we try to reinforce the competencies and the capacity building of our local authorities, either representatives or technical staff. We launch and develop direct cooperation projects and partnerships between partners between members and with other partners, with other stakeholders of the region. For example, we are conducting 4 interreg projects. We are a knowledge sharing platform. We try to boost, to share all the good practices and the mistakes also among our member cities. Not to try to invent the wheel every time, so to see what other members are doing and how we can and they can learn from each other. And we also try from this accumulating of project of knowledge, we also try to project and to be a political voice with all the Mediterranean authorities, local authorities in the region, promoting and giving voice to them and representing them in other arenas, in other agoras, with the states, with regions. We work in this thematic working fields, strategic planning, environment and biodiversity, more and more social cohesion, economic sustainable development, and urban services. These are our principles: sustainable development, climate crisis mitigation, and economic development with a sustainable perspective. Let me stop here, and just to this is why we are here, why we have been invited, and we are thankful for that. And all those characteristics that I shared with you, and you know a lot, which is all the impacts that and the challenges that cities are facing. The local authorities, in fact, we speak about cities, but our local authorities and our people that are living there, and with hopes and expectancies also, expectations, excuse me. So I would like to bring some to pose some questions. How local authorities can tackle to these challenges. How they can relate with states, because states are formulating the agendas, Agenda 2030, the new urban agenda, the European Green Deal are conducted by states. But sometimes I have to say, maybe not counting on cities, which are, as I said, and you know, and they host the majority of the population of the world and in our region. So, how we can help cities and local authorities to tackle that? How they can improve their capacities? Which is the space of cities to solve these problems? And how cities can improve, as I said, their capacities. This is something that we are doing in MedCities, but these questions are on the table. We are wondering these questions. So maybe Mrs. Hana Alamuddin can put some light on these questions, and on this maybe she can provide some answers to this. Of course, she has her own reflections that we are willing to hear, but we, as a network of cities, we need a lot of reflections. We need a lot of light also on how we can improve as a network, and when network that is also working with other networks. For example, in the Mediterranean Cooperation Alliance, we are working with other networks, a network of networks. So we like a lot to cooperate, to share experiences. How Mrs. Hana Alamuddin can reflect on that. Mrs. Hana Alamuddin is a lead LEED accredited professional in sustainable neighborhood design. She's graduated from Greenwich University in the UK. She then went on to her Master of Science in Architectural Studies in designing for Islamic societies, which I think it's a very differentiating approach to what must be done to tackle these challenges. She started her practice in Lebanon, and the practice Almi Maria, Architects and Designers for Sustainable Development. works on architectural, urban design, and landscape projects within the perimeters of sustainable development, which it celebrates a lot. I told her, because me as a biologist and then I specialized as urban planner, I often witnessed, biologists often witnessed and stared at architects as someone that didn't like too much to protect the environment. But hopefully we have here a green architect, and a specialist with this vision of how develop cities and buildings with an ecosystemic approach, which I personally celebrate. Mrs. Alamuddin is also senior lecturer at the American University of Beirut and a board member of the Lebanon Green Building Council, which I also highlight a lot. Please, Hana Alamuddin, Mrs. Alamuddin, the floor is yours for 30 minutes. We are willing to hear you a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your invitation and presentation. Just want to clarify a point. We, in the 80s, when I did my master's at the MIT in designing for Islamic society, it was, the word sustainability was not there. So in a way, it was really about being aware of the locality, the context of the culture that is different from the European culture in architecture and development. Anyway, so I will share my screen now. Okay. Okay, can you all see my screen? Yes?
Yes,
there.
We can see
Okay,
it.
Good. Okay, well, I wanted to start really from the basics and really looked at what it is that we mean by strategic urban planning. And according to UN Habitat, it is a management tool that determines the direction in which an organization is moving and how it will get the urban strategic and how it can get there. The urban strategic planning determines the direction of development of a city, urban area, in the context of its current profile and SWT SWOT analysis. It is oriented towards the future, and this is quite important. The attempts to foresee how the world would be different 5 to 10 years from now. It is aimed at setting the city's development direction based on what this future will look like. And here I would like to, where is it doing this? I would like to, I would like to highlight a very important point, which is the existing political situation in the Eastern Mediterranean, which is where we are, well, where I am. If we look at the countries on the Eastern Mediterranean, 10, which are about 10, 5 of them, 4 for sure, but 5 are in turmoil, whether it is wars, whether it's political unrest, economic unrest, etc. Now, one could argue that the source of this turmoil is actually the lack of agreement on the future direction of the nation. So this is where this issue needs to be thought about within this context. Now, unfortunately, if we look at the future, then again, the prospect of peace in the region is also under question with the discovery of gas fields and the rising tensions and disputes about this issue. The point here is that in conditions of turmoil, government concerns are related to survival, safety, and security. Moreover, conflicts result in the loss of expertise and know-how that leave the countries and government bodies understaffed and unable to function properly. My presentation will focus on Lebanon, not just because I know it well, but because I believe that there is an interesting message to be heard, and as it is your worst nightmare scenario for mitigating climate change. Now, according to the UN Habitat, Lebanon is highly urbanized and at almost 90% of its population being in urban centers, and close to 65 of these live in 5 main urban conglomerates. According to the UNHCR, the country holds around 1.5 million Syrian refugees in an overall population of approximately 6.8, making it the country with the highest number of Syrian refugees per capita in the world. As for climate change, we know that the actual source of greenhouse emissions are energy production, transport, waste, landfills, agriculture, and deforestation, all sectors requiring a clear long-term vision, roadmap, and administrative tools and funding to be able to succeed. If we look at the planning structure in Lebanon, we find that as far as the administrative tools are concerned, planning is very centralized, and it's dealt with at various levels by the following bodies. We look at basically the Higher Council of Urbanism. It is formed from different ministries and specialists, and they are responsible for recommending and guiding the urban planning at the national scale. Then we come to the Director General of Urbanism, and they are responsible for developing and reviewing master plans all over Lebanon. The CDR was created for the reconstruction of the country, separate from the ministries, and they supposed to regulate urban growth through a national physical master plan, which is really just a guiding framework. Now, for the municipalities in Lebanon number 1,038, and the majority of them have less than 4,000 inhabitants. Now, the municipalities have responsibility over planning, including water, wastewater, urban management, economic, social development, and environmental protection. But the majority of municipalities lack the administrative and fiscal capacity to carry out the project. Furthermore, when we consider these sectors that we just mentioned, they tend to span areas much larger than municipal boundaries. Therefore, since the installment or the reinstallment of municipal elections in 1998, there was a rise in the formulation of what we know as municipal unions. So from 1990, there were 13. They rose up to 53 in 2016. This is a very important shift because it allows the efficient planning as they can relate to the local communities, but have new tools and capabilities such as observatories for strategic planning, access to donors. However, the Union of Municipalities still lack independence from the central government and ministries, and they cannot access funds from the government. And although they are a move in the right direction, they really need to be developed further. As you can see here, they have no fiscal autonomy to impose or collect new fees. Now, the second layer that I will be dealing with or looking at is really the energy sector. So we looked at the administration and we saw that the planning is moving sort of in the right direction, but it lacks autonomy still. Now our next phase is the energy sector. And this is highly, again, centralized. In 2009, at the Conference of Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the Lebanese government committed to increase the share of renewables of the projected total electricity and heat demand in 2020 to 12%. What we see in front of us is the Beirut River Solar Snake project. This was the first step towards that goal, and a call for expressions of interest was launched in April 2013 by the Lebanese Ministry of Energy and Water. Now, the Beirut River was the largest body of water in the city. It originated in Mount Lebanon. Its waters were directed to the city via aqueducts and canals since the time of the Romans. The river flourished as a riparian landscape and a social space for the city until 1968, when it was transformed into a concrete canal to control its flooding of the neighborhoods that grew next to it due to urban growth. This transformed it into an industrial waste waterway and sewer, posing numerous health risks to the neighbors. The Beirut River solar snake made use of the space over the canal to install a photovoltaic farm in the middle of the city. This ingenious idea provided clean energy to the main power company of the nation. Planned in several phases, the first phase of peak capacity of 1 megawatt was connected to the grid in September 2015. Now, the project consists of 3,600 polycrystalline PV panels of 300 watt peak, tilt angle 10%, spanning 31 concrete beams above the Beirut River. It actually generated 5,427 megawatt hour of electricity until June 2019. The project further reduced around 4.5 kiloton of carbon dioxide based on a grid emission factor of 0.56 kiloton and saved about $900,000. In 2019, this project won the prestigious environmental award, Energy Global Award, under the national category, competing with more than 2,500 projects submitted by more than 880 countries. Moreover, this project played a very important role in raising awareness of clean energy and sources. Unfortunately, other projects planned by the Ministry of Energy and Water with a public-private partnership, such as the solar farm in Shahrani, were implemented. But some, unfortunately, were not, like the wind farm of Akkar, because of the economic meltdown. However, in a way, the economic meltdown was itself a mitigating factor for climate change, as the subsidies on fuel had to be lifted by the government due to the sharp depreciation of the local currency versus the dollar. And according to a study by the Ministry of the Environment and the UNDP in 2013, the fuel subsidies were found to be $3.1 billion, i.e. 7% of the country's GDP. Now, while aimed to help the poorer section of the population, we can see that it was found to benefit higher income households and actually increased energy consumption and hence global warming. Furthermore, the lack of central electricity meant that neighborhood generators installed as a backup for the central electricity have become the main source of energy for households today, with their owners applying higher and higher tariffs and virtually no control over the air pollution. This has also brought to light the issue of energy consumption, with an increase in the installation of photovoltaic solar panels on roofs, especially for institutional buildings. So in a way, the economic meltdown raised a lot of issues and questions. Another mitigating global warming factor is through green buildings. And it's a common, however, Lebanon, like other southern countries, the criteria used by international bodies like LEED and BREEAM and others tend to be difficult to comply with the country's existing situation, building regulations, environment, and context. Therefore, an NGO, the Lebanon Green Building Council, of which I'm a member, in partnership with the IFC, member of the World Bank Group, worked on building a rating system that is incorporated and that it addresses issues that are within the building owner's control. The first part of these regulations addressed issues that are related to existing commercial properties. The rating system is designed to measure the extent to which existing commercial buildings in Lebanon are healthy, comfortable places for working, consuming the right amount of energy and water while having a low impact upon the natural environment. Today, we have 5 projects that have been certified, with 3 in the pipeline. Now, another main source of greenhouse gas emissions is, of course, transport. Now, although Lebanon was one of the first countries in the region to have a railway, built in 1895 with a network of 40 stations connecting 200 kilometers, the system was badly damaged during the Civil War and has not been reinstated since. Meanwhile, the average time the Lebanese spends commuting across the city is 3 hours per day. This means that 16% of a person's production time is spent commuting at the cost of $2 billion each year. The main cause for this loss is related to the lack of organized public transport, the bad condition of the roads, and the rise in the number of privately owned cars. The rise averaged a yearly increase of 13% between 2007 and 2016. Now, over the years, many proposals and studies were done looking at the metro station, which is problematic in Beirut because of the archaeology under the city, reinstatement of the train, tramways, bus system, etc., including a master plan by the Ministry of Public Works and Transport. However, this plan was deemed not economically viable in the short term because of several obstacles facing the government, such as political tension, social unrest, and the refugee crisis. It is estimated that 70% of cars in the city come from outside. Therefore, the most feasible plan was for a rapid bus transport link presented in 2018 and accepted for funding by the World Bank at a cost of $295 million. However, here again, the Lebanese government requested that the money be relocated to finance the cash subsidy cards to accompany the lifting of subsidies. And it looks as if the World Bank is willing to consider the redirection of the loan towards a program to fight poverty. Now, this information is from Engineering for Change website, and they are, highly well documented. Now, I'm going to talk to you about a very interesting and valuable project for the city of Beirut, which is here at the level of the city, which was funded by the Ile-de-France, and it's called the Liaison Douce project. The idea behind the project is to provide the citizens of the city with a green corridor of public space, pedestrian and cycling paths linking 2 iconic sites, the Bois de Pine Forest of Beirut, and the center of the city along the Damascus Road. The study was designed by planner Habib Dibs, and the result would have been not just a high-quality linear urban park, but a provision for alternative means of transport, cycling, and walking. The added value of the project is that it follows the Green Line, which is the zone that separated East from West Beirut during the Civil War. Thus, the project will also act as a link between the communities on either side of the Green Line and link the heart of the city to the edges. The study was done and submitted to the municipality in 2011 and has since stayed in the drawers. When the president of the Ile-de-France, you can see here the different public spaces that it provided. But the president of the Ile-de-France, Madame Valérie Pécresse, visited Beirut and inquired about the study and why it did not get implemented by the municipality as originally agreed. She was informed that the study requires approval from various ministries and is stuck in the bureaucracy of the system. As far as Habib Dibs is concerned, he says, public projects in Lebanon are not for the public good, but for the authorities to make money. And this project obviously was not financially of use to them. On the other hand, a private venture startup of smart electric scooters was started in 2016 in Beirut. Loop was set up by a group of highly skilled professionals in telematics, fleet management, logistics, and market development to offer the service for the first time in the Middle East, starting with Lebanon. This app-based service operates a fleet of smart electric scooters and charging stations, making commuting in the congested city efficient and clean. The philosophy of the firm is, as part of the sharing economy, we believe that the future of transport is based on access instead of ownership. Loop was named one of the top 100 startups in the region by Forbes Middle East 2017. So, another small-scale project, which is very interesting, is the rehabilitation of the Shahrani Stairs in Tripoli. The project was funded by UN Habitat and Solidarites International and was designed by Emergent Vernacular Architecture, EVA Studio. The rehabilitation of the Shahrani Stairs is a project that is about public space and located in Qubbi, a low-income neighborhood in Tripoli. The project was about rehabilitating the stairs as they are vulnerable to flooding and other issues, but are also the main access of the neighborhood to the historic center of Tripoli and its souks. The project is also about social integration, as 15% of the community are Syrian refugees, and it's about post-conflict recovery, as the stairs are located near an area that saw clashes between two neighborhoods of different sectarian profiles, Jabal Muhsin and Tibbani. Focus groups were formed to engage the communities and to hear their concerns and needs. And we see that the material used for the stairs were locally manufactured, acoustic tiles, and the mural that we see was designed in collaboration with the local artist, Alfred Badr, and represents a local girl that was killed at 11. Of course, all this was done after fully coordinating with her family. Now, both the tile work and the mural were appreciated by the community, and the space is now being used as morning gathering spaces and routes to the city. The inclusion of lemon trees refer to the city's historic citrus industry that is common. You can see them, they're very small, unfortunately, in this slide. Now, a good tool for mitigating climate change is green space, I think we all agree. Now, Beirut has 0.8 square meters of green space per capita versus the 9 square meters per capita recommended by the WHO. Now, going back to the Beirut River, an initiative by the firm The Other Data, who are a regenerative architecture and consultancy firm led by Adib Dada, had been conducting extensive research on the Beirut River and its neighboring areas. As we said, the area was a rich riparian environment and was a backdrop of many cultural events, such as the Armenian Water Festival, Vardavar, and the Muslim Eid. Now, unfortunately, faced with complete disinterest for ministries and institutions responsible for the Beirut River, the consultant decided to go to a more concrete, simpler project, a Miyawaki forest, a Miyawaki forest, the first in Lebanon. With this, he approached the mayor of Sindh al-Fil to gain access to the land. Funnily enough, funding was easily collected using the SUCI app, the Sustainable Urbanization Global Initiative app, and a forest, which is a service provider for creating natural wild maintenance-free native forests. Miyawaki forests are dense, multi-layered forests, 30 times denser than other man-made forests, that's capturing 30 times more CO2 and 30 times more pollution. They are 10 times faster growing, and they restore soil, health, and biodiversity in degraded sites. They become completely self-sufficient after 3 years, requiring no watering or maintenance. In May 2019, the Other Dada planted Lebanon's first native urban forest, called Beirut's Riverless Forest. The municipality was required to take care of the watering for 2 years, while the consultants provide all the fundraising, site work, and 2 years of maintenance with the help of volunteers. Volunteers from various backgrounds joined the project and helped in planting and maintenance, and the project restored not just the first forest ecosystem, but brought communities together. The second part of the planting is completed in November 2019, amounting to 2,000 native trees and shrubs, and restored land by the capital's polluted river. Beirut Riverless Forest earned the D&AD Future Impact Award in 2019 and IF Social Impact Prize in 2020, and was featured in the 5th Istanbul Design Biennale. The project, therefore, has achieved a lot, from being the first Miyawaki forest in Lebanon to a successful and replicable pilot project for cities in Lebanon and beyond. We are expanding Beirut's Riverless Forest in Sin el-Fil in November, and we will be planting another 3,200 saplings there, also integrating pathways and central public space. We are also planting a linear forest inside the Chia Municipal Park in 2 weeks. That's 800 saplings, and are negotiating with the Zouk Musbeh municipality for a similar project. I was told by Adi Dada, the designer behind this project. This brings me, as we mentioned, Chia, to another project, which is the Chia garden public spaces. Now, in a way, this is a success story at municipal level, as Chia was one of the most affected suburbs of Beirut during the Civil War. Many buildings still bore the scars of the war, as it was on the demarcation line. Highly populated area, the municipality, led by its president, agreed on a strategy to change the perception of the area to attract businesses through green public spaces. Working with various stakeholders of the area, from family groups to parishes, local businesses, the municipality strategy was in 3 parts. The municipality allowed temporary use of unbuilt plots in the area as gardens and play areas. They also set up the garden and community space, which you can see here, and brought in others to invest in the network with additional space and services such as gardens, sports facilities, coffee shops, etc., to enliven the municipal spaces. The project has proven a great success, as it gave access of the residents to open spaces to enjoy. Now, green spaces can also be used for economic support. This is the Garden Wall project. It's a micro gardening project implemented by the FAO and funded by OCA, managed by Lebanon Humanitarian Fund. Syrian refugees and host communities in Lebanon are improving their nutrition thanks to FAO. Initiative is helping households build vertical micro gardens out of recycled material. Each crate can be used to plant 2 consecutive vegetable crops per year and can be used to grow a wide range of summer and winter vegetables that can be harnessed throughout the year without using arable land. The project primarily targets women-headed households and those with large number of children, and the beneficiaries until today are 30 vulnerable Lebanese households and 120 Syrian households. Now, speaking of waste, this is a project that is very interesting. It is the Saida Garbage Mountain project. The Saida Garbage Mountain, yes, became a symbol of the garbage crisis we suffered in the country. It was set up in 1982. It received 300 tons of solid waste, and as it received waste from 250 people living in 15 municipalities around Saida. The waste mountain stretched 55 meters high from the surrounding terrain and covered an area of 60,000 square meters. Located on the southern edge of the city, no more than 200 meters away from the residents, the garbage mountain was a threat to the health of the residents, and since it did not have a proper base, the garbage leaked out into the ocean frequently. In 2016, the UNDP and the Ministry of Environment and the municipality of Saida inaugurated the garden project, which replaced the garbage mountain. It was funded by the Lebanese government and implemented through the Ministry of Environment and the UNDP. During the event, a documentary went through the process of rehabilitation of the site, from degasification to sorting waste, from rocks to plastics, etc., and finally landfilling by burying organic waste. The result was a 33,000 square meter garden with more than 10,000 trees, backgrounds, and theaters. However, this is one garbage dump on the Mediterranean that has been successfully dealt with. The government still lacks a comprehensive plan to deal with the garbage disposal, as the average resident in Lebanon produces up to 1.2 kilometers of solid waste each day, with more than 3/4 of it destined for landfill or an open dump site. At least 2 garbage dumps are still being used along the Mediterranean in Lebanon. The Costa Brava, which we see on the right, and the Bir Hamoud dump, which we see on the left. One individual who probably done more for waste recycling than any other entity in Lebanon is known as the garbage king of Beirut, engineer Ziad Abi Shakir. He launched Cedar Environmental as a sorting composting company in 1999 after he returned from the USA. He was soon faced with corruption when dealing with large municipalities and other government bodies. Abi Shakir's main aim was to build smaller scale recycling plants to deal with garbage for smaller towns, and it took him 10 years to set up 12 recycling plants. Abi Shakir then went on to innovate and came up with a patent technology that produced what they call Ecoboards. Made from recycled bags, Ecoboards are highly durable and successful for small construction like the recycling bins found in Beirut, soon to number 150. Ecoboards were also used to make vertical planting structures, and we can see them here. They were used to make the drain covers, because during the economic crisis, anything metal was actually stolen and sold for money. Now, with an experiment of the Ecoboards as planters, the 12 planters made from 10,000 plastic bags were planted, and within 41 days produced 2,000 heads of lettuce. Now, this is part of a project to promote roof gardens in the city and help bring back the birds back into the heart of the city. His next, this is some information about the recycling. This is from his Beit Miri facility. Now, the next and very important innovation was linking glass recycling with the old traditional Lebanese craft of blown glass. The Green Glass Recycling Initiative, GRIL, started in 2013 after Lebanon's only recycling glass factory was bombed in 2006. The collaboration with 6 remaining glass blowers in the country was to produce beautiful multicolored glass items, and after the August 4th last, Abi Shakir transported 8 tons of shattered glass to be recycled, and this is one of the projects. Finally, to conclude, it is clear that the precarious situation in Lebanon has rendered central government and ministries unable to fulfill the many recommendations in studies and reports made by donor agencies on climate change mitigation. One small positive aspect of the tragic economic meltdown in the country has been the lifting of subsidies, which has been an eye-opener for the citizens. We have seen how citizens of the country have driven very valuable and important initiatives to help reduce environmental damage and global climate effects. But valuable as they are, issues like monitoring global warming need an overall structure that plans, coordinates, and follows through on these initiatives. Climate change is a global matter, and governments need to be held accountable. And here I'm referring to the dump sites on the coast of Lebanon. Coordination is required between international agencies and donors with clear mechanism of follow-up and retribution. But at the end of the day, though the people of Lebanon and the government know what is needed to be done, but the threat of conflict and political instability in the region, their priorities are unfortunately elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Alamuddin. Very inspiring examples of the work that's been done in Lebanon. That makes me reflect on something. But first, let me recognize not only the Instituto Europeo della Mediterranea, the European Institute of Mediterranean, but also the Club of Rome, Fundación La Caixa, for organizing this event. And what you said, I would like to highlight some of the ideas that what you said and impose some more reflections on my behalf. Firstly, I think that the need of working together, you expressed this is much needed for the small municipalities. So cooperation, and if it's possible, institutionalized cooperation, like that we have here, for example, where I'm right now, MedCities is hosted by the Barcelona metropolitan area, which is an institution of 36 municipalities that work together, that share competencies on waste management, on water cycle, on energy, on mobility. The Metro of Barcelona, in fact, is managed by the Metropolitan Authority, not by the municipality, for example. Yeah. So it's very needed to tackle climate change, to work together and give bigger scales, most of all for the small municipalities, because they don't have resources. They have fewer resources in many cases. In the very small municipalities, the only person who is dedicated to this function is only the mayor, for example, or one engineer, or only one architect. So they don't have specialists, experts in waste management, experts in mobility, experts in public spaces. So it's very important. Another thing that I would like to highlight from your words is the need of political stability, of course, for doing great infrastructures. For example, the recovery of a river, a metro, as you a sub railway, as you expressed. It's very sad to see that sometimes the money that is providing international funders is not going to the right places, or not going to the final objective that was aimed. So it is very important to have political stability and strategic planning and urban planning. Not everyone is doing strategic planning. Let me say the MedCities has conducted some strategic planning across the Mediterranean region for some cities, and from those works are becoming in specific actions, planning actions during the last 10 years. So it is very important to planning, to know what you're willing to do, surpassing the mandates, surpassing the political orientations, maybe in some aspects. There, of course, there has to be different political orientations, but there are main issues that have to be a general consensus. This is, I think, one of the main aspects that I also obtain from your words. That we need consensus to do the great works, the transformation of the city, the planning green spaces, planning metro, planning the recovery, for example, of rivers, planning the extension of renewable energies. These need a consensus because these projects last more than one mandate, one political mandate. So for me, it's very important. Another thing that it's important for me from your words in some of the cases you express is the appropriation of the measures that must be done by people and co-construct with people. The case of the stairs, the tiles, some of the things must be done with people, with general public. We need to raise awareness by general public, and because changing behaviors will also change the way of people demanding solutions for their representatives. It's very important. It's sad to see, but it's so common to see dumping places like the garbage mountain. But there are frustrating visions, but you also provide hope and good examples on how we can tackle, if there is political will, if there is popular will, to press to the politicals also and to vote to the right direction. Regarding, of course, we have to regard your own personal orientations, political orientation, but ask them to solve what the problems that are there, regardless the political orientation. So it's very important to that. And I like to highlight also, and gives me a reflection on the importance, in my opinion, of green public spaces. Is a good way to democratize. I call it democratize the public spaces. The example of the render and the actual situation, in the present situation. For example, that the project de la liaison douce is trying to achieve. It's very important. We could show many of aspects in the world transforming gray spaces into green spaces. So this is, for me, is democratized. So it's also a thing that I wanted to highlight, and the different scales and the ability of the restoration, as you showed, of one of the garbage mountains. It's very important to see that there is hope. There is that you can turn things into. There are good examples of turning things, bad examples, but also good examples that some things can be restored. Rivers, they can be restored. And just finally, and to put maybe some for your reaction, or for the people, all the public that are the audience that we have today, please pose your questions. But I like to pose one reflection, and if you wanted, Mrs. Alamuddin, to react, that we see in the Beirut River the example of a damaged river which was paved in order to save from flooding. But we know, the ecologists, that the best way of flooding is have green spaces into the river, having the riverbed, having all the meanders of the river, having all the spaces to flooding, and so they have not to be urbanized. So and we have an example in the river that in spite of deep pavement, the river taking advantage of the river paved by putting solar panels. So it's some kind of contradictory, and maybe it poses me a question of mitigation versus adaptation, and how many trends go to the adaptation instead of mitigate or restore. So, and we could do this with selecting waste instead of preventing the production of waste, or boosting the renewable sources of energy instead of saving energy, for example. So this is, or electric cars instead of public transportation. So no, we are not really changing the pattern or the model. So this is something that maybe you could react to this view of mine. And of course, we are willing to see if there is someone from the audience. We would like very much to have your questions from the audience. But maybe Mrs. Alamuddin, you would like to say something about my reactions.
Yes, I mean, yes, I think the difference between like adapting or mitigating is how much power you have over the situation. Because if you are in control, you can mitigate. But if you're not in control, then you need to adapt and you need to make the best of what you have, which is really the story of our lives in this country. So the issue of the solar, the issue of the canalization of the river happened in the 60s. And for some reason, it seems it was quite a common thing because we have it again in the Abu Ali River in Tripoli. And so given the terrible situation that the river became, which is a sewer, they decided to try and do something which is more useful by installing solar panels. But funnily enough, the Adib Dada, who's one of my students, I talked to him today about this project, and I said, why did you do this? And he said, because I was very upset about them covering the river with solar panels. So I thought, okay, we cannot get the water back, we'll get the ecology back. And so, so it was his reaction to something that, you know, on the other hand, I think it's a good project. I mean, what can you do? Urban expansion has come right up to the river edge, and anyway, it's too late. So it's a good compromise between the two.
Yes, it's very interesting when you say if you have power, you can do either one thing or the other. It's very interesting, of course. Please.
No, I just want to say one thing. I think that, you know, again, to look at the issue is very global. And I think that, you know, when I was doing my research, there's so many studies, so many reports done by donors and agents and so on, but yet there is no follow-up. You know, the studies are done and there is no, you know, governments are not questioned as to what's happened. And like, you know, why isn't it being implemented? What's going on? So there is this issue of being responsible. And I think that it needs to be on both sides, not just the receiver, but also the donor needs to follow up and needs to make sure they're dealing with the right people, needs to make sure that they're dealing with the people across the scales, yani from not just government, but down to the municipalities and down to NGOs. So, you know, because if you just deal with government, then it stops there. But if you include the whole scale of the community, then there is always one that's going to carry on pushing for what needs to be done.
Very interesting, and this leads me to explain again what MedCities are doing. MedCities is this kind of link between the funders and the final receivers, and we know what exactly sometimes our members need, and we also need what the funders want to achieve. And we can transform these ideas into actions, maybe. So I think that much needed the union of municipalities in institutions like MedCities. We have Hana. We have two questions. That the organization said that either we could answer you or me. But I think that one is maybe more appropriate to, I could answer, and the other for you. What do you think? One is the panelists mentioned that the majority of municipalities lack the administrative and fiscal capacity to carry out sustainable projects. Could you give us some examples of how could cities improve their capabilities to implement greener urban planning and actions? This, I could say something upon this, but of course you are free to say. And the second one will be, given that Lebanon suffers from dramatic electricity shortages, are there any initiatives led by municipalities focusing on improving building energy efficiency or promoting sustainable energy like solar in the city? Will the current crisis lead to spark new initiatives? Please.
Okay. I think that definitely the current crisis has woken everybody up, and it's made people aware. Now, the demand on solar panels has increased a lot, and people have realized that not only is it expensive, it's also unreliable to depend on the local electrical situation. Now, there is a legal issue here, because legally the EDL, the Electricity de Liban, has the monopoly to provide power. So in a way, this needs also a change in the governance and change in the laws to allow different municipalities to function and to do that. But definitely at a private level, there is a lot of demand and increase in for solar panels. And I think that at the moment, we are in the middle of the mess. And I think, we're all just on survival mode, it's just like day by day. But there is a major change in the way people are seeing their lives, and even the way they are using money and buying things. And local industries have become much stronger because imports have become very expensive. And so there's a lot of local products that have come on the market and so on. So it has been good in that sense. And people have realized that they don't have to have the old system. They can actually break away from it. But again, one has to keep in mind that there is a whole political setup in this country that is in control of resources, of the legal situation, everything else. And there's a need to break that before you're able to really move forward. But hopefully they will be intelligent enough to realize that they need to change too, because they're coming to the end of their logic. Unfortunately, I just want to say one thing. Just because the shooting stopped doesn't mean that the war has ended. And really, it is something that one needs to keep in mind when we look at countries like Syria and Libya, and because really war can take very different forms.
Sure.
In society.
Very true, very true. And maybe when the guns stop, we take the attention to another way, to another place, and this is not what we have to do. Let me provide some ideas regarding the first question. How could cities improve their capabilities to implement green urban spaces? Well, for example, when you have the lack of competences or the lack of possibilities of capacitate yourself, this is why networks like MedCities, for example, have their raison d'être, the reason of their very existence. For example, we promote the city-to-city cooperation, the city-to-city transfer of knowledge. In fact, we have knowledge transfer centers in Tunisia and in Lebanon. Last year, for example, we conducted our first cycle of capacity sessions for our member cities, regardless of the projects that we have conducting with international funders. Thanks to Barcelona metropolitan area and the government of Catalonia, we had some resources to make a general capacitation of our city, of our cities, for the elective representatives and for technical staff. So we conducted 4 sessions, 4 cycle of sessions on waste management, energy, sustainable energy management, sustainable mobility, and environmental management, like nature-based solutions. And we were conducting these capacity sessions and with mentoring sessions with some of them with our members. So it is possible. For me, it's a way of transferring capital, money, and also brain capital from one cities to the others, from the learnings and mistakes from ones to the need of capacity building of others. So there is a room to do things, but of course, it would be easier if each state would help every and each of their own municipalities to build their capacities. But when there is a lack of that, this is when appear international organizations like ours. So there is possibilities on that regard. Let me check if there are, yes, there are more questions. We have tops 10 more minutes. So the third question will be, what can we learn from traditional architecture to adapt and mitigate climate change in cities? Hana.
Well, the problem with cities is that it's a question of density. And so the whole nature of architecture of cities is different from your sort of traditional architecture, which tends to be, independent units. However, there is a middle section here, which is not the traditional architecture as such, but the mid-rise, i.e. the environments, cities that were probably built, in the before the start of the introduction of lifts, ascensor. When there were no lifts, walk-ups, what they call the walk-ups, where we're talking about buildings that are 6 to 7 stories high, they create a very interesting climate situation whereby you're able to control the microclimate with them, and you're also able to control services and so on, and the interaction of people with the street. So I wouldn't go for traditional architecture, but I would go for an architecture for cities that is really medium height, that has the density required to make development feasible, but on the other hand, not high rises that are, highly environmentally inappropriate and demand a lot of energy and so on, and also separate people from the street.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. We have a fourth question that maybe I could provide some ideas. The question is, do you see inspiring examples? And you, of course, if you haven't, do you see inspiring examples in the Mediterranean regarding cities fighting climate change? Of course. Could you mention a successful case of a city from the northern Mediterranean region and one successful example from the northern region? So from the southern region, apart from Lebanon? Well,
Lebanon is a disaster case. Yeah.
Well, you showed some bad examples and some few good examples also in small cases, small scale cases. Well, yeah, there are some. I could say, let me not speak about maybe once. I can speak from one city. For example, the city where I am now in Barcelona. They have officially declared the climate emergency. So they have also a planning for green spaces. They have conducted in this house in Barcelona metropolitan area, in fact, with a metropolitan vision, they have conducted a restricted area for some cars. So some cars cannot enter, not the city center, but a great part of the metropolitan area. Some cars that they don't wear a specific label regarding their emissions, they cannot enter to the metropolitan area. So this is a good example, I think, that people fighting local pollution, which is not always the same as climate change mitigation, but of course that it has a link. And Barcelona is increasing more and more public spaces like the liaison douce that you have showed in Beirut. More and more they're making the pavement, the deconstructing the gray pavement to put green or brown areas. Some are green and some are without any vegetation, but are not gray, are brown with the soil directly. You can see the soil. So in order to have less reflection of the temperature, for example, from the pavement, or being more habitable, more democratized, more livable. And in the south, I would like to highlight, in present time, it is not a successful case yet, but it will be, is Tunis, the capital of Tunisia, which is conducting the strategic plan. We are the leaders with Metropolitan Area Barcelona and the municipality of Tunis. We're conducting the strategic plan for 4 years of the Tunis capital city, linked to the Sustainable Development Goals. So it is awarded by the European Union, Europaid, in order to precisely localize the the Sustainable Development Goals of the Agenda 2030. So with a holistic vision of tackling the climate effects and the causes of the climate change. So I invite you to follow this project called Asima Tunis. Mercedes can provide to you, any of you, the audience, and Hana, information to this project, because on UN Habitat is regarding us, is watching us. Many institutions are regarding, and in the final phase, we have the final phase. The third phase of the strategic plan is how to capitalize to other cities in Tunisia and in the region. So we will be able to learn from our mistakes and successes from this process. And I don't see any other question. Yes, there is a fifth one, maybe the last one. Hana, what will be the role of cities during the COP26? Will their voices be heard during this crucial event? This is a good one. Maybe did you understand, or no. Maybe I could repeat? What will be the role of cities during the conference of the parties 26 in Glasgow, the climate summit that will be held in the United Nations summit, like the Paris one in 2015, that will be held this year in Glasgow, in fact, next month. Will the voices of the cities be heard during this crucial event? I have my opinion. Maybe you can express yours. Be free.
Well, I mean, I think you are more. It's more appropriate for you to answer this because you're more up with that, you know. So please go ahead.
Okay. Well, I felt the same in 2015. I had this, that in Paris, cities need to be outside the official conference. I think that they need to be together and through their organizations, the organizations of cities. Each state has organizations of municipalities, have to give the voice to the states in order for the states to give the voice to the COP26. So if not, there are other voices around the COP26 that the municipalities can express that. So I think that it needs to be done. We, the cities, need to provide this voice to the states. We have several means to do that. We have to finalize this. Thank you very much, Mrs. Alamuddin. Thank you very much. I think I felt very comfort with this session, with the dialogue. Thank you for the organization, to IAMED, to Club of Rome, to Fundación La Caixa. Thank you very much for the audience. Thank you very much to you all. And we have the sixth dialogue on next week. So be aware of the lacks of the 6 dialogues on this cycle of conferences held by organized by the Institute of the European Institute of the Mediterranean. thank you very much to you all. Have a good time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.